Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's call. We're doing live questions and answers with Magdalena, the Hormones Balance founder. And if you are part of our community, that's great. And if you're not, then make sure you get on our list. Every week, I've got solid articles that are going out that we talk about different foods and how they help rebalance your hormones. So you can do that by signing up on hormonesbalance.com, my website. And you also get the 15 breakfasts that rebalance your hormones with that. So, today I'm going to talk about Brussels sprouts and seaweed as a great way of managing your breast health. And since October is the month of breast cancer, and so breast health is a super important topic, and I want to talk about some of the foods that are hugely supportive, but oftentimes we don't really know what to do with it, like what do I do with Brussels sprouts, or how do I consume seaweed? Is it safe for my thyroid? All those questions. So we're going to cover that in a second. I want to open up with today's call with sharing some stories with you, both of them happening to my immediate family, my aunt, and another one's a childhood friend. So what happened was just last weekend I talked to my dad, and it turned out that my aunt, my uncle and my aunt's house burned down in January this year. They were literally sitting in the living room, and my aunt says, I think I can smell smoke. By the time my uncle went upstairs, the whole upstairs was on fire. It was an all electrical wiring that caught fire, and it was a wooden house. And so literally their entire house of 30 years has burned down. And they were in their slippers and their pajamas, and they ran out and they lost everything. And so, my aunt went through a significant amount of stress. Hi there. Hi, Marcy from Arkansas. Yeah, introduce yourself. Tell me where you're from. Always good to hear from you guys. So what happened was, my aunt never really sought any support in terms of, dealing with PTSD. And I mean, you can just imagine your entire life is just burned down. They ran out in their pajamas and in their slippers, and that was it. So the whole family created a rescue mission, and they were living in their summer house in the middle of winter in Poland, which tends to have those continental winters, which are very cold. So, just a month ago, my aunt was diagnosed with breast cancer. And when my dad told me this, I was in such shock because my aunt is one of those healthy people, healthy women. I always remember seeing her. She's a dentist by trade. And I always remember her, her like making ferments, and every time there was a season, let's say little baby cucumbers, she would marinate those, pickle those. She would make her own sauerkraut. She used to make her own bread. So this is a woman who lives a healthy lifestyle, and so for her to be diagnosed with breast cancer just the 9 months after this very, very stressful event. The one thing that comes to mind, and that's something that has been a recurring topic in my conversations with women who've developed breast cancer, the healthy sick people, as we call it, right, is that person who already doesn't eat gluten, takes care of herself, has changed all her skincare products, uses essential oils as part of skincare protocol or as cleaning products, doesn't binge on sugar, right? A lot of women are that way. And yet they've developed cancer. And so, the one topic that's been coming up over and over again in these conversations with the breast cancer survivors, thrivers, and current people who currently been diagnosed, like my aunt, is the other layer that can play a huge role in our overall health, and that's how we manage stress, how we have the relationship we have with ourselves, the relationship we have with other people. And there was a wonderful interview about that I did with Dr. Veronique this year. And so I will post the link about this video so you can watch it. But basically, she was like that woman who ate everything organic. She was the person who, was into yoga and meditation way before it became mainstream in the United States. Actually, she's Canadian. And yet she developed breast cancer. And so she talks about it, how, for example, past trauma, she had, I think she went through sexual molestation when she was really young, and she actually couldn't remember it until she went to therapy, and all of that came up. So what I'm just trying to say in today's call is that as much as, you know, you're here for food, and I'm going to talk about food, and, you know, I'm super passionate about food, I also want to, I don't want to be creating a false sense of security that as long as you're just eating clean, you're going to be okay. Do a check-in with yourself. Where are you in terms of your emotional health? How much stress is there in your life? How are you addressing that? Is there unresolved stuff of trauma from the past that might be impacting how you feel, even though you might not even realize how much it's really bringing you down without, you know, really addressing it first. And so you might say, so let me, and by the way, you guys, for those of you who just came on, tell me where you're from. Can you hear me okay? Always love to hear from you guys. So where are you from? That would be great to know. So yeah, so, you know, how can stress contribute towards breast cancer, right? That's a question that you might be probably wondering. So Michigan, hey Jennifer from Michigan. So there is a really clear and easy connection, actually. You know, what the biggest one, and I can think of right away, I mean, you might say, you know, from Georgia, hi Jen from Georgia, you might say, well, it's because the body's making, you know, is becoming very acidic when you are stressed out, and that's very true. You know, stress is a killer. We often hear that. But how does it really happen on, like, I like facts, and I like the bioscience behind things. Like, how does it all happen, right? And the answer to this is that when you're stressed out chronically, right, what happens is, hi Theresa from Chicago, what happens is there is a hormone called pregnenolone, which is a precursor for progesterone and for cortisol. And I talked about it before, so if you've heard me say this before, then just it's a good reminder. And if it's the first time, there might be a big aha moment for you. So pregnenolone is a precursor hormone. That means it's the hormone from which progesterone and cortisol are produced. So guess what? What happens is, you know, pregnenolone there's a pathway that has to make a decision between, hey Kristen, I'm going to talk about seaweed in just a second. The body has to decide, do I produce cortisol to help you deal with the current stress, trauma, and get you through it in one piece, so to speak, or do I give her progesterone? Do I create progesterone from that pregnenolone so that you can sleep well and be relaxed and get pregnant? You know, well, the answer is, of course, the first, right? And so what happens is that pregnenolone gets pumped into producing cortisol, excess cortisol, because you're in constant state of trauma and stress, the same way my aunt was, and then pregnenolone basically gets stolen. So it's called a pregnenolone steal, because cortisol steals that pregnenolone, and you do not have sufficient amount of progesterone to be produced. And, you know, things like breast cancer, as you know probably by now, because I've been keep talking about it this month, it's an estrogenic cancer, which often results from estrogen dominance. Even though you might be low on estrogen overall, and I talked about it last week, so I'm not going to repeat that anymore, but you can be low on progesterone and still have estrogen dominance because of the relationship of some of those estrogens. But also importantly, progesterone is there to mitigate, to offset the aggressive estrogen cholesterol. So guess what? When you're chronically stressed out, you don't have enough progesterone to oppose estradiol, which is that aggressive estrogen. So super, super important, and so that was one thing I want to share with you. The other thing is that I wanted to share with you is just a dear friend of mine from childhood, actually, living in Malaysia, emailed me and she said, I think I have fibromyalgia. And then she just been diagnosed with lupus. And, lupus is a very serious autoimmune disease. And my whole message about this is that, autoimmunity, stuff like, lupus is like, she's on steroids right now. And I've sent her a number of books that she has to look into to address autoimmunity. If you're interested, then let me know, then I'll post those books. But, what's really, really important there is, hi, Bea. Hi, nice to see you here. What's really important to see is that, to recognize is that when you have, things like lupus or any autoimmune disease or even breast cancer doesn't happen just overnight. It doesn't happen within a week, 2, 3, not even 3 months. Somebody like my friend had digestive issues going on for a number of years. And so you know, as you probably know, autoimmunity starts with your digestion, right? So it's the small intestine. That's where the immune system pretty much starts. And so, to no surprise, most women with autoimmune diseases also have a lot of problems with digestive issues. So I want to just alert you that if you have constant digestive issues going on, such as bloating, constipation, loose stool, you're going to run to the bathroom after certain foods, or you're not eliminating for, you know, even like if you're not going to the bathroom once or twice a day, that's really bad. I'm going to talk about constipation another time, but it's bad for your hormones, it's bad for toxicity, it's bad for your digestion. You know, burping, right? If you're burping certain foods, and I think Bea was the one who mentioned, she's on the call right now, that she burps seaweed. And that's a great indication that it's seaweed doesn't agree with you. So, you know, anyway, so what I'm trying to say is take care of your digestion, learn how to eliminate foods and to restore your digestive health. And if you don't know how to do it, I'm going to post the link to my online cooking program. It starts off with a free workshop. So take a look at the workshop. I explain in the workshop how to do the elimination diet to eliminate the big food triggers and then reintroduce them and figure out from there what is causing your digestive issues. Yes, gluten, dairy, eggs, soy, and corn are the big culprits. But guess what? You can also have other little things like, well, not little, but beef could be a problem for some people, and so would be nuts. A lot of people can't tolerate nuts, right? And especially more and more so now that more people are going paleo, which is good, but also they bring in a lot of nuts. Nuts are not the easiest food to digest, and so that can be causing problems. Okay, so introduce yourself, you guys. Confirm that you can hear me okay. I can see there's 30 people online right now with us, so that's great. And I just realized that I have questions from last week, and I left them in the printer, so I'm just gonna go and grab them right now. Okay, so by the way, if you feel like there are women who would benefit from this kind of information, who struggle with their hormones, whether it's thyroid, menopause, PCOS, they are having terrible PMSs, they can't get pregnant, right, because of hormonal reasons. Hi there, Kirsten from Seattle. Share this podcast, this live transmission with them, and tell them about it. So the way this works, you can post your question while I'm doing it live, and I will, when I see that question coming in live, I will answer it. And if not, then I will print them out just like here, and I will be then answering them on the next week's call. So it's always on Fridays at 10 a.m. Pacific, and that's probably 1 o'clock Eastern. So let me go through questions that were posted from last week that I didn't get to on time. And Marcy is saying, I'm always stressed. I take Xanax daily. I was on the hormone. Yeah. So Marcy, you need to keep your question short because it shows up on my phone and it disappears pretty quickly. Hi there from Canada. Kino, is it Kino? Yeah. Sagawa. So you need to keep your questions really short because they will disappear. What do you think causes heart palpitations? Kristen is asking. That's a really great question. There could be a number of reasons. One big one, is hello from Pennsylvania, Tina. So one big one is it could be an overactive thyroid, very, very common. So get your thyroid tested, and not only your TSH, free T and free 4, but also look at the TSI antibodies. That's to rule out or confirm Graves' disease, which is an autoimmune version of an overactive thyroid. Super, super common. I had that as well. Didn't treat it properly. 10 years later, came back with a vengeance, became Hashimoto's disease. So that's one. The other thing is, believe it or not, food sensitivities can actually cause heart palpitations as well. So those are the two really common ones. A lot of, it's funny because when you see a cardiologist, they'll give you an incredible number of really complicated and expensive tests. And a lot of times they come back and say it's inconclusive. Of course, if it's something genetic and if there is a heart issue, then this is not my area of expertise, but they are far less common than, for example, thyroid or food sensitivities. So let me get to the questions from Bea. She's asking, let's see. So she's saying, Bea Zorzi said, seaweed popped out as a positive. Okay, let me get to Kino. What to eat myself damage for thyroid healthy again. Okay, Kino, I'm gonna talk about thyroid in just a second. Let me get to the seaweed question. So Bea is asking, seaweed popped out as a positive on my IgA, IgM panel. Those are food sensitivity panels, how the immune system reacts to them. I know I'm low on iodine. Getting my iodine is a must with the breast tumor, hypothyroidism, and other suggestions of what to eat and use to bring my levels up. So yeah, so first of all, if and she also says later that whenever she was eating sea snack, which is a really great, like a nori based snack, she was burping and she could taste the nori flakes. She could feel the burp, the taste of seaweed in her mouth. So that's a really great indicator. If your panel shows something positive, it's more likely you are having a problem. It's oftentimes you have the negative, the foods that you are actually sensitive to that doesn't show up. Something shows up, you probably do have a problem. And even if you don't want to do tests, it's a really great indicator that, you know, if you're having, you're burping at, that is a sign your body is having a hard time breaking that food down. So how else can you get iodine into your diet? It's pretty simple. You can resort to Lugol, L-U-G-O-L, Lugol's drops, and those are iodine drops that are, you can just add it to water, start off with 1 drop, and then dose it up from there. So how do you know you're iodine deficient? That's a good question, right? And why is iodine so important? So guess what? Iodine is a substance that we have, you know, really lost a lot of as a micronutrient, from our diet. Partly is because we do not, there's, for example, salts that, salts, for example, is, that we have is the iodine in the iodized form. I like it and I don't at the same time, because iodized salt is a salt that has been completely stripped of all nutrients, and that's why it's so nice and white. And then iodine's been added to it. So if you short on iodine, it is some form of a solution, but I would much rather talk to you about bringing seaweed into your life. So how do you know you were low on iodine? First of all, you can do what's called an iodine loading test. Most states allow it. You can work with a naturopath to get that done. Most states allow it except for New York. The other thing you can do is that, you know, start eating sea vegetables, and I'm going to show you in a second, and see how you feel. Because if you suddenly feel better, and when I say better, it's a couple of things. A lot of people report having lots more energy. So that's one of the symptoms of low iodine, is that you're constantly tired. Well, tired can also fatigue, right? Well, fatigue can also be due to a lot of other issues. So it's hard to like point it to one specific thing, but that's one of many. And a lot of people are iodine deficient, especially women. Second thing is when you have breast lumps, oftentimes, guess what? Breast and the brain are the 2 biggest receptors of iodine. So in other words, when you're deficient, those are the 2 organs that will suffer the most. And in women, developing, you know, nodules, right, and breast lumps is quite symptomatic, could be symptomatic of low iodine. The same thing goes for the brain. So iodine is so much needed by the brain that, you know, I've had a lot of people who said, the minute I started eating iodine-rich foods like seaweed or seaweed snacks or whatever, I started feeling so much better, and like I'm so much more clear in my head. I'm energized, and my memory, like my brain fog is gone. Right, I can be much sharper. So if you feel like that right away, that is a sign that you definitely have an issue with iodine. So I want to show you a couple of things, a couple of brands and products that I like to use. So one of them is Kombu. You might have seen it also goes by the name of Kelp, right? So this is how it looks. It's like a shoe sole. It really is. It's pretty tough and it's hard. So this is not the easiest food to eat, but what I like to do with Kombu is so many people are now making bone broths, right? And so the easiest thing you can do is add Kombu to your soups, right? Or to your bone broth or vegetable broth, whatever you're making. It's just an easy addition, and it's not gonna change the taste of your broth a lot. In fact, if anything, it adds that additional taste of umami, which is that, you know, the depth of flavor that MSG is known for. But actually, the original MSG was made from seaweed and salt, so that's your like a natural MSG without the terrible side effects, right? So that's one great way of just easy, super easy way. So who's gonna try that? Who's making bone broths here? And I'm curious if you're planning to add that in. I do this all the time, and it's just wonderful. And I find these kind of the bone broths that I make, or actually really love vegetable broths as well. I find them very energizing. So another one that is really cool to use is, let me show you, there is, and the brand that I like to use is Iodine. So that's one of the cool brands. There's another one from, what is their brand name? It looks like this. You might have seen them before. Emerald Cove, okay? I'm gonna talk about this one in just a second. So yeah, so arame and wakame are somewhat similar in terms of the usage. Let me pull it out and show you how it looks. So it's really those very thin, can you see, let me move this way. Yeah, so those very thin kind of, you know, long dehydrated strips of, really, that's how it looks. Now, so how do you prepare this? Really simple. Both wakame, and so let me show you how wakame looks. Both wakame and arame can be prepared really easily just by soaking them. So this is how arame, or wakame is actually quite tiny. So it's actually, I've got multiple pieces, but like one piece is just as little as this. And how you can prepare it is basically you put it in hot water for like 5 to 7 minutes, maximum 10 minutes, and they will completely soak up the water and become soft. And my favorite way of adding them is into salads. One of the things I will post in the links up above this video is this Japanese cucumber salad that is really, really simple to make. And it uses, you know, it's basically using cucumber and rice vinegar. You can substitute it with lime or lemon, sesame oil, and, you know, and these good guys, just the seaweed added to the salads. The only time I don't like adding seaweed to the salads is when you're making something that has got a sweet tone with a salad, or kind of a sweet form of a dressing. I've made this mistake before where I was using like cranberries or some fruit or whatever in a salad, and then I added this. And hi there from the UK, Nia, I think. Yeah, and that did not go down very well. So that's the only thing I would not recommend doing. Lastly, I want to show you, there's actually a couple of more. Who here knows dulse? So yeah, so just let me know who here knows dulse. I'm curious. So dulse is really this really nice, soft. This doesn't even have to be. Can I eat them alone? Kristen is asking. You can, but you know, it's a pretty intense flavor. So the one thing that is, I think, quite nice to eat alone is the nori sheets. I'll show you in a second. But otherwise, it's pretty intense. If you don't mind them, sure. But I always feel like adding them to soups and salads, it might be an easier sell than eating them directly. But try, yeah. Dulse is another lovely one. You don't need to dehydrate it because it's for long at least. Dulse is, I know it looks very dry here, but let me try to see if I can open it up, because it's like a sheet and it's really thin. I don't know if you can see this, super, super thin. And so typically what I'll do is I'll just plunge it in water and then right away take it out, because it becomes really slimy really quickly and soft, and then put it in a salad. And that's one of my favorites, actually one of my favorite seaweeds. And then the one I want to show you is nori sheets, that I think most of you have seen before, and you know, I think most people have gone to Japanese restaurants to know this. But you know, all your whenever you have like a California roll and whatnot. So how I like to use this, and I want to make this recommendation for you, there's a couple of ways. So those are your nori sheets, right? I think most people know it. So how do you incorporate this? Is pretty simple. One of my favorite ways is to make a super quick lunch when I'm running out of time. And even if I have time, if I don't feel like cooking, then using this as a wrap. So imagine putting inside here, right, some avocado, some Brussels sprouts, I'm going to talk about in a second, and you know, maybe a piece of chicken that you got left over in a fridge, or a can of sardines that are BPA-free sardines, are actually really good. They contain a lot of calcium, you know, and just drizzle with some olive oil, right? And whatever other vegetables you want to put in there, maybe some mayo. It's a really, and then you just wrap it up, use this as a wrap, and it just makes it a wonderful meal. I'll have a couple of those and it sustains me right till dinner with no problem whatsoever. So what's so great about seaweed? You know, not all seaweed is high in iodine, by the way. Dulse is somewhat high. Nori is not high at all, but wakame and rame are very high, right? So if you're after iodine, those are the seaweeds to go to. I have a great book at home, and I think you can get it on Amazon, called the Sea Vegetable Gourmet Cookbook. And you know, and so that's a great cookbook to have. It's very granola. It's kind of like, but one of the cool things I like about this book is this seaweed or sea vegetable nutritional chart at the back here. And so it's really quite amazing the micronutrients that you find in sea vegetables in general. So super high in phosphorus, in potassium, very decent amounts of magnesium, phosphorus, even iron. Sodium, of course, iodine, some of them, so, you know, like kelp. Oh, by the way, kelp, the kombu I was showing you, that's really high in iodine. So if you plunge it into your vegetable broth, that you get all those benefits. Let's see, a lot of vitamin A, all the vitamin B1, 2, 3, B6, and B12, which are all the most important vitamin Bs. And as well as some calcium and magnesium, if I haven't mentioned that. So, you know, in Western countries, when women have low magnesium levels, we go to chocolate and cacao, because cacao is high in magnesium. That's our fix, right? In Japan, before chocolate arrived, women were going to kelp and kelp snacks to replenish their magnesium levels. So just a really wonderful food to incorporate. So who here is gonna be trying some of those some of the seaweed vegetables and adding that into your life? I'm very curious. Just let us know about that. Bea was asking just now about how do you know it's a sensitivity or HCl level problem? Well, I mean, if it's a HCl, then just take HCl supplement or do apple cider vinegar and then try seaweed and see. But if it's coming out for you in your food sensitivity panels, then yeah, then it's most likely you do have a problem with that. Yeah, Jen, thank you for sharing. Jen is saying she hasn't been really exposed to seaweed before, but she will try it. Well, thank you. It really is, it's a little bit of a new taste, if you may, if you're not used to it. But I think if you combine it with those salads I talked about, I will post the links, like I said above, then it becomes really quite delicious and totally worth it. So let's see, what other questions do we have coming in? I'm gonna be talking about next about broccoli sprouts. I've got these little guys right here. So give me a second on that. And in the meantime, I'll see what questions are coming in. In the meantime, I'm gonna look at, would it be good, they'd be good with kale? Sure, absolutely. Actually, one thing I forgot to talk about is seaweed and people with Hashimoto's. Literally eating seaweed pieces right now, but I cannot find broccoli sprouts in my area. Okay, let's talk about that in a second, Jessica is saying. Thank you for sharing. So let me just talk about seaweed and Hashimoto's, because that's an important conversation. When you have Hashimoto's disease and elevated antibodies, anything from 100 and above for TPO antibodies, you want to be really careful with not overdosing iodine. It doesn't mean you shouldn't be eating anything with iodine, because you still need iodine to live, but you do not want to be dosing on Lugol's, the drops I was talking about. You do not want to be eating kelp, because kelp is super high on iodine. Bringing iodine into your body when you have elevated Hashimoto's antibodies or TPO antibodies will make it worse. And I have to tell you, a lot of doctors who are not specialized in autoimmunity have given their patients like kelp supplements and pills and iodine in whatever form, and then this person would, like, within 2 weeks will go down and be in bed for 3 months in recovering. And so it's a really quite a serious issue. If you're having low thyroid function without Hashimoto's, then these foods I talked about today are super helpful. If you have Hashimoto's, you want to be really careful and look at things like I mentioned, Nori. So Nori Sheets would be a safe option when you have Hashimoto's, because they are very low in iodine. Dulse is somewhat on the lower side, but you definitely want to stay away from Kelp. Kombu, right? The one that looks like a shoe sole. For those of you, I see there's more and more people coming on. So if you're just joining us, this is Kelp that looks like a shoe sole. And but if you put it in a soup, it's actually really delicious. And then you take it out. You don't eat it. You don't have to eat it. Some people do. I don't, because it's pretty intense. So let's see what other questions do we have coming in, and otherwise I'm going to read out some of them here. Okay, so a question that's super popular and very common with a lot of you. Who here is going through menopause and's got hot flashes? I'm curious to know. Just raise your hand, or just do a thumbs up, or just say me. So you know, hot flashes is so common, right? And what about kelp powder? Marilyn is asking. Good question. Same thing. You can use kelp powder. In fact, one of the really cool ways of using kelp powder is create your own sprinkle, so to speak. You can combine kelp powder with salt and with roasted sesame seeds, and use that as a replacement to your sea salt shaker, right? And instead of using sea salt on sprinkling on your food, you're basically sprinkling that kelp powder with the salt and with the sesame seeds. It's a really nice combination. We've got actually that recipe coming out on the blog. So yeah, so who here has got hot flashes? I'm curious. Eunice, I'm not sure what you're saying. You're asking a question, Mark. I'm not sure what that means. So yeah, hot flashes is an interesting one, because most women in menopause go through hot flashes, but not only. Women who generally have low estrogen levels will go through hot flashes. And you know, the funny thing is that there's a couple of, so it's not really funny, but you can address it in two different ways when you have low estrogen levels. One is bringing up your estrogens naturally, right? And my favorite ways of doing it is using maca. So you can, if you go to my blog under articles in hormonesbalance.com, search for maca. There's a maca article. We wrote a really long one about what kind of maca to pick. So maca could be a hit and miss with some women, because it's not everybody. Hi there, Marilyn from Columbia, Canada, British Columbia. So it's a hit and miss with some women, because it is. It just doesn't work for some women. That includes me, even the right phenotype. The second thing is bringing in 2 tablespoons of flaxseed every day is going to help you bring up your estrogen levels as well. Hello from Switzerland, Andrea. So the other thing that really works so well with managing hot flashes is to rebalance. Do you want to guess what it is? So type in your answer and see what body system to rebalance in order to prevent hot flashes, other than bringing up estrogen. Who wants to guess? So see what I'm getting. See what you guys are thinking. See whether anybody can get that right. What do you need to rebalance to get rid of hot flashes? And I'll wait for your answers in a second. So the answer is iodine stopped my hot flashes. Really good. Okay, so that's a nutritional issue. That's great. Thank you for sharing, Deanna. The other one, liver. Possibly. I'm sure liver will help all around. I'm just gonna wait for thyroid. No, not so much. Not hot flashes. So the answer is rebalancing your sugar levels. When your sugar levels drop, when you have normal estrogen levels, you can recover pretty quickly. But when you have low estrogen already and your sugar levels are crashing, then you're gonna get hot flashes. It's just simple as that. Adrenals. No. So the answer is sugar levels. So one thing that you can experiment with, and I want to give you an example. I actually spoke to this doctor who teaches about hormones, and she said the way she's managed to address her hot flashes as a hormone doctor is that she would have this sweet smoothie for breakfast, and then she noticed that 11 a.m. every single day she was getting hot flashes. So then she started eating, before that happened, like 15 minutes before 11 o'clock, she would have a handful of nuts, like, you know, hazelnuts or almonds or whatever. And then she said, and then she never had any hot flashes. Well, so there's two things that you can probably see from this story, right? One is that when she eats something before the sugar crash happens, she elevates her blood sugar levels by having some protein. She doesn't have the hot flash. But number two, which is actually kind of ironic, is that I don't recommend doing a smoothie first thing in the morning, because that's a great, and especially a sweet smoothie. If it's a savory smoothie, if it's a green smoothie, which, by the way, you can make that with the broccoli sprouts. I'm going to show you in a second. I'm going to talk about these broccoli sprouts here. You know, you can put them in smoothies. When you're doing a green smoothie, you're not going to have a sugar crash. If you're doing a smoothie that's got banana and berries and honey added to it, you know, that is all sugar, sugar, and more sugar. And so you have it by 8 o'clock, 11 o'clock, it goes like, goes up, your sugar levels go up, and then boom, 11 o'clock, they drop. So what do? One of my favorite ways of dealing with that, and for those of you who've been following me for a while, you know that, is always start off with a PFF kind of breakfast. I'm going to post a photograph, so look at that below. After this call, look for a PFF breakfast example that I had, for example, this morning. A piece of lamb, a huge sauteed bunch of vegetables, right? And I used, what did I have today? It was collard greens, a lot of mushrooms, and I think it was a parsnip in it. And then I had radishes, fermented radishes as kimchi, in the kimchi form. So nice ferment, nice vegetables, you know, lots of green vegetables and mushrooms, because I love mushrooms, and then a piece of protein. And I can tell you that it's, what is it, 11 o'clock now, 11:40 right now, and I'm nowhere close to even being hungry, right? So, you know, so when you have a breakfast like that, you're not going to be crashing, and then you will see that your hot flashes are going to get minimized significantly, okay? So who here is going to be trying the kind of a PFF breakfast? So actually two questions. Who's already doing PFF breakfast? Because I recognize some names from my current community, and some of you guys are new. So I'm wondering, are you doing PFF kind of breakfast? PFF stands for protein, fat, and fiber. Sorry if I didn't mention that. And Kristen is saying, I've heard flaxseed are controversial, but they help. Yeah, so yeah, that is true, that flaxseed are phytoestrogens, and they actually help more than they do any damage. So they bring up your estrogen levels up higher. Women who have estrogen dominance are afraid that they're gonna, you know, I'm already dominant, why would I be adding more flaxseed? It's a huge simplification of estrogens, and it's only somebody who doesn't understand estrogens will say that. Because there are various forms of estrogens, and flaxseed helps you to skew, to help you metabolize the estrogens in a positive way, meaning that it moves the balance towards the positive metabolites of estrogens rather than the antagonistic ones. Kristen is saying yes. Thanks for sharing. Great. So yeah, so who here is already doing PFF breakfast? I'm curious to know. So let me tell you about the other food that I promised to talk about, and that's broccoli sprouts, sorry. This is these little guys like that, right? Aren't they cute? I mean, like, if you just pick up one, it's just this little, like, the start of life. I just totally and absolutely love these little guys. Andrea saying yes. I'm assuming yes, you will try it. So broccoli sprouts my other favorite for breast health management, because, I mean, there's such an incredible amount of nutrition in them in here. I'm going to talk about nutrition first, then we can talk about where to get them from. Because, you know, they are, first of all, since this is breast cancer month and we're talking about breast health, you know, there are studies that, and I have them on my blog quoted, 1.5 cups of these little guys a day for women who have breast cancer, so not to even mention breast lumps, because that will work the same way, has shrunk in the studies, has shrunk breast cancers with the same level of effectiveness as tamoxifen, which is a highly toxic drug that is also an estrogen blocker. I'm talking about women who have an estrogen receptor positive breast cancers. Now, isn't that fascinating that you can do 1.5 cups of these little innocent guys and shrink a tumor with no side effects, and probably even much more nutritional value that comes from that, as compared to you know, something as invasive as tamoxifen, which, by the way, 5 years later, it just pretty much, you know, it really destroys your liver. So what's in there? There is a substance called sulforaphane, and that is that very potent substance that will do the work that I'm talking about. Would they help shrink fibroids is the question. Yes, the answer is it. I haven't seen studies on that, but because it has so much of anti-estrogenic properties, that I can't see why not. But it's a good question. I'm gonna, if I remember, I will research that, because I actually want to know. So what do you do with these guys, and where do you buy them? Well, where do you buy them? I get, you know, sometimes I get lazy, so I don't make them all the time, but I would get them just at Whole Foods. And so if you go to Sprouts, Trader Joe's, Whole Foods, most health stores, like especially those hippie ones, food co-ops, you know, they generally sell broccoli sprouts, and Brussels sprouts now in fall, you know, and on the shelves, like where all the sprouts are. Pretty easy to find. And sometimes I get asked questions, what about the other sprouts? So, you know, I think there's a lot of other sprouts like alfalfa and clover and stuff. And I think they're all great, especially anything that comes from radishes, right? So, you know, like, radishes are so great for estrogen detoxification anyway. But the question here is more, you know, I haven't seen studies on like radish sprouts of, excuse me, what they can do for you in terms of, you know, shrinking lumps and cancers and stuff like that. So I don't know, but they are certainly great. How do you use them? Well, I think 3 things I can think of right away. And if you have another better way of adding them in, let me know. Post it here. Jessica said, unfortunately, they don't sell them here. Perhaps request the store to order them. You can. The other way, Jessica, thanks for mentioning, the other thing you can do is, believe it or not, it is so super simple to grow them at home yourself. It takes you 5 days. So what you need to do is order, you know, a couple of, get a bag of broccoli sprouting seeds, right? So broccoli seeds, but get those ones for sprouting specifically. Make sure they're organic. And, you know, all you need to do is really simple. Yeah, Andrea is saying I'll grow them at home. Totally. It's easy, right, Andrea? It's really as simple as soak them for 24 hours in. Make sure it's not chlorinated or fluoridated water from the tap. So use like filtered water, spring water. Just soak them overnight, or 24 hours overnight is fine. Get rid of the water, let them, and then from that point they're gonna start sprouting. What's really important is that you rinse the sprouts as they're beginning to open up and grow. You rinse them once, twice a day, because otherwise you might have mold coming in. All you have to do is just get a jar, like a 1-pint jar, put the seeds at the bottom, right? Do the thing that I talked about, the soaking, and then you get the water out. Just turn the, you know, if this is the jar, I don't have one here with me right now, but if this is the jar, just turn it horizontally, right? And you have the seeds at the bottom, and they're gonna start growing from up here. It takes you 5 days to grow them, and cover it so there's no flies and stuff like that going in. Cover it with a cheesecloth, and you know, so you want to have ventilation coming in, but you also want to be rinsing them frequently enough. Otherwise, you're gonna start growing mold. That's the common problem people have growing mold, is because they are putting it, you know, somewhere where there is not enough ventilation. You do not want to close them up completely. Yeah, any brand. I don't really have a brand, Jessica, for broccoli seeds, to be honest. You know, as long as it says there it's good for sprouting and is organic, then you're good to go. So that's it. And you know, honestly, just Google it, and gosh, there's so many links that are gonna show up on how to sprout things. I also teach that in our programs on sprouting. So let's see, what else do we have here from last week questions, some of the good ones. Marcy Davy was asking, why is my doctor continuing telling me that I don't have Hashimoto's, but I have had hypothyroidism for over 20 years? Yeah, so, you know, it's because I'm not sure, Marcy, if your doctor tested for the antibodies, the TPO antibodies. That's really important to test those first. If they showed up negative, you'll want to test the other antibodies called anti-TGB, anti-thyroglobulin antibodies, and see whether that's negative as well. Yeah, so, you know, doctors don't really like to test for these things because there isn't a single pill they can give you to lower the antibodies in case they are positive. So that's the truth of it. It's that's really what the reason would be. So yeah, I hope this call was helpful today, talking about seaweed and broccoli sprouts. I hope that you incorporate these amazing seafood vegetables into your diet on a regular basis. And start really feeling better with them because they really are amazing, amazing superfoods. Okay, you guys, let me see if there's any other questions coming in at the last minute. If not, then I'm gonna chow off, trying to make the calls no longer than 45 minutes because that's probably the attention span that you have and the time that you have in doing stuff like that. And if not, then I'll definitely see you next Friday, again on live Q&As. And if you're watching it on the replay, then make sure, is cabbage a good veggie? Kristen is asking. Yes, it's a cruciferous vegetable, also super helpful. I actually really like it in a fermented form. So if you are doing things like, you know, if you want to do things like sauerkraut with cabbage, in fact, I like red cabbage better than green cabbage just because it's nutritionally slightly more dense than the green cabbage. But both of them are great. Yeah, thank you guys for all the messages that are coming in right now. Very, very blessed to read them. Okay, you guys, so see you next Friday and keep it awesome and make sure you try some of those things I was showing today in your life before we talk next Friday. Okay, bye for now.